Live from New York at the opening bell, this is Business Today. Shares on Wall Street slump on fears of a global trade war as President Trump slapped tariffs on goods from America's biggest trading partners, Canada, Mexico, and China. Europe's in the firing line too as the president threatens to do the same to goods from the EU, calling its trade policy an atrocity. So where does all this leave the UK as it tries to reset relations with the European Union? Plus, deciphering the Doge. Critics accuse Elon Musk of an abuse of power on reports he now has control of $6 trillion worth of federal spending. But his biographer tells me the bromance with the president may not last. Welcome to Business Today, live from New York. I'm Ritika Gupta, and it's a chaotic start to the week on Wall Street with shares slumping on the open on fears of a global trade war. Car makers, drinks firms and power companies are leading the sell-off after President Trump announced new 25% taxes on imports from America's closest trading partners, Mexico and Canada, to come in from tomorrow. He also hit Chinese goods with an extra 10% tariff. Canada has hit back with retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods, with Mexico also threatening action. The president says he'll hold talks with the leaders of both countries today. And for more on all of this and its impact on the markets, joining me now is Matt Rowe, head of portfolio management at Nomura Capital Management. So, Matt, President Donald Trump has already ceded that there will be some pain to Americans from these tariffs. And of course, for the market, the big concern is the ongoing threat to inflation. So how inflationary could these tariffs be, and how long do you expect these tariffs to last?
Yeah, well, that's the big question of the morning, of course. And there's always the question between what is stated during a campaign and what actually becomes policy. You have to add in the third dimension here, which is within the deal making that the incoming president likes to engage in. You could always see a removal of these policies as well at any point in time. So it's hard to guess how long they will last. It's certain that they will have an impact because we've already seen reactions to them and things that will actually impact consumption and costs in the United States.
And some estimates of the impact, Goldman Sachs saying there could be a 5% slump to U.S. stocks over the next few months because of these tariffs. Barclays strategists estimating that the tariffs could lead to a 2.8% drag on S&P 500 company earnings. Certain industries could face some profitability challenges. Many are talking about the auto industry as one of those examples. How big is the risk that these tariffs could slow down U.S. economic growth, even potentially lead to some layoffs?
Yeah, I think it's very big. I think that when you look at what's going on within the government itself from an employment standpoint, and then you look at the impact sector by sector on jobs, on consumption, the totality of this story is bound to have a negative impact on both equity prices, margins and performance of companies, as well as consumer spending. And when you think about the fact that within the US, consumer spending drives roughly 2/3 of the economy, it's going to have an impact. It's just a matter of to what degree. And when you start with equity valuations and risk asset valuations like private or public credit rather, and then move further down the line, you're bound to have some repricing of risk. So I think what we're seeing this morning is just the beginning of trying to understand and price in that level of impact and what it'll mean for equity prices, and then it'll flow through to the rest of risk assets.
All right. Thank you so much to Matt Rowe of Nomura Capital Management. So are markets right to be worried about an escalating global trade war? On Sunday, President Trump told the BBC's Nomura Iqbal that he would also hit European goods with tariffs, calling their trading relationship an atrocity, but he appeared to hint that the UK might be spared.
We'll see how things work out. It might happen with that, but it will definitely happen with the European Union, I can tell you that, because they've really taken advantage of us. And you know, we have over a $300 billion deficit. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm products. They take almost nothing. And we take everything from them, millions of cars, tremendous amounts of food and farm products. So the UK is way out of line, and we'll see the UK, but European Union is really out of line. UK is out of line, but I'm sure I think that one can be worked out. But the European Union it's an atrocity.
Christophe Bondy is a former senior counsel to Canada on international trade, now a partner at the global law firm Steptoe. Christophe, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, are these tariffs here to stay?
I guess that remains to be seen. Some have said this is a negotiating tactic to bring partners to the table in the review of USMCA, which wasn't supposed to happen until next year. But if they do stay on for any length of time, there will be incredibly damaging to the North American economy. And I think that's the key point, that this is an own goal against the American economy, against American consumers, against American manufacturing, because of the deep integration of the North American economy since all the years from NAFTA and now USMCA.
So do you think then the US is actually likely to be more impacted by these tariffs than its trading partners, given the retaliation that you've been talking about, and Canadian government has already retaliated or detailed that, a 25% retaliatory tariff on its own on more than $100 billion worth of US goods?
Well, I think Canada and Mexico will also suffer from this measure, undoubtedly. I mean, when you've got such a deep and strong trading relationship, putting 25% on every product that is imported into the other country is an enormous barrier. But I think that's the point, is that pain is something that is going to be inflicted on all three economies. And when you think of the competitive position of North American manufacturing in particular, this is not going to do anybody any good. And to be honest, if you're trying to get people to come to the negotiating table to review the terms of a deal, and you act in a manner that's completely contrary to the previous deal, that's illegal from an international law perspective. I mean, the pretext for this measure against Canada is completely ridiculous. It's not exactly inspiring confidence in any renegotiated deal. And I think the result will be, to some degree, and we'll see how deep this is, but a kind of refocus in Canada. It's already happening. Made in Canada, dumping of U.S. products. We're not going to carry $1 billion worth of American products in Canadian shops.
Christophe, sorry to interrupt you there, but very briefly before we go, Trump has also hinted that Europe could be next to face tariffs. How do you think Europe might respond to that? Very quickly, though, because we're running out of time.
Sure. I think the same way Canada did and Mexico will, which is just to identify, and they've already done that, I'm sure, a series of products for retaliation. And it's going to break down what is currently a strong trading relationship. To the extent that Europe sells more to the U.S., it's that the U.S. wants to buy European products in the same way that they want to have Canadian manufacturing and they want to have Mexican manufacturing. That's a choice that U.S. businesses and consumers are making, not an attack on the United States.
Thank you so much to Christophe Bondy of Steptoe Law Firm. Now, can the UK achieve a reset in its relationship with the European Union? That's the hope of Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer as he joins a gathering of European Union leaders in Brussels today. It's the first time a British Prime Minister has done that since Brexit. Talks will focus on defence and security cooperation. He'll also meet with NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte. Sir Keir has ruled out rejoining the EU single market as a red line.
I've been very clear since I became Prime Minister that I do want a reset of the relationship between the UK and the EU. That does not involve a return to the European Union. We had a referendum here on that, and that matter is settled. But I do want to see a close relationship on defence and security, on energy, on trade and our economy, and that is what we're working on. And I think that is certainly in the UK's best interest. I do believe it's in the EU's best interest. And already I hope that in the last 7 months there's been a manifest difference in approach and tone and relationship.
Trade expert Sam Lowe told us about the areas the UK thinks it can make progress.
The UK has identified some areas where politically the government feels it can deepen the relationship with the European Union without breaking its commitments not to re-enter the customs union single market. And energy is an interesting one. There's been an ongoing long-term discussion about whether the UK and EU should link their emissions trading schemes, which would have some benefits for energy producers, but also for exporters to the European Union who might be hit by its carbon border adjustment mechanism in the coming years. And that's a new thing in terms of the UK talking about it publicly. So I think, there's a relative degree of optimism, but obviously there's other things going on in the world that will also have an impact.
And a gross abuse of power by an unelected bureaucrat. That's a response from one member of the US Senate Finance Committee on reports that Elon Musk has been given access to a Treasury payment system that administers $6 trillion of government cash a year, including Social Security payments. Mr. Musk is heading up President Trump's efforts to shrink the federal government. The Tesla and SpaceX boss is due to give an update on the plan later. I've been speaking to his official biographer about where his controversial bromance with the president might go next.
If you had to list the traits that Elon Musk has, accepting limits would not be in the top 10,000. He's going to push limits, he's going to break limits, and it's going to cause some problems, but it's also going to get certain things done. We sometimes had been a nation of risk takers, and we became nations with more referees than risk takers, more guardrail builders than risk takers. And maybe it'll be interesting. I think he will go too far. He thinks he will go too far because he always says if you haven't gone too far and then have to scale back, it means you haven't tried hard enough. So it's going to reverse this notion of we have a whole lot of guardrails and conflict rails.
And Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they're such big personality. So do you see this relationship enduring, or do you see a fallout down the line? And what kind of issues do you think that they may clash over, or personality traits that may lead to that?
Well, we see that Musk already pushes the limits, and Musk has never proven in 30 years that he can work for somebody.
Fight, fight, fight.
So Musk is not going to just be a puppet for Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has never shown a real willingness to share the limelight. So this is not exactly the most stable of molecules. But I guess if I had to predict, it's going to last for about a year because they both kind of have bonded in this strong way. And they both need each other because Trump really does, as we've seen, for better or worse, want to blow up much of the bureaucratic state in the United States.
That's it from Business Today. Stay with us here on BBC News.